Women today have rights that are equal to men, and girls today expect that they will have the same opportunities as boys when they grow up. They can do the same things, such as vote, have almost any job they desire, and own land. However, that wasn't true during much of the 20th century. Until World War II, women stayed in the background. They got married and took care of their children. But when many of the men left to fight in World War II, women had to do the jobs that the men had done prior to the war. That started the first feminist movement. About 20 years later, when activists started standing up for women's rights during peacetime, the second feminist movement started. One person that contributed to this turning point in history was Betty Friedan. She devoted her life to seeking women's equality in all aspects of life. Betty Friedan brought forth to our country a new idea of what women could accomplish in society. Her role in the second feminist movement was hugely important. She wrote several books for women and helped in the founding of organizations like the National Organization for Women. Friedan was born on February 4, 1921 in Peoria, Illinois. Her father was a jewelry store owner and her mother was a housewife. Pre-marriage, her mother wrote for the local newspaper, but had to stop because married women weren't supposed to work outside of the home at that time. Friedan wrote for her high school's paper, college paper, and published a literary magazine with some friends. She attended Smith College and graduated in 1942. In college, the women didn't worry about jobs. They planned on being wives and mothers. But when they graduated during World War II, there were very few men to marry. After college, Friedan went to graduate school at Berkeley and was offered a scholarship to get a PhD, but didn't accept it because graduate school didn't fulfill her. In an interview with PBS, she said, "I didn't want to be in a situation where I was broader than the boys." By that she meant she didn't want more knowledge than the men because she would have been frowned upon. Then she moved to New York City to live with college friends and work as a journalist. About 5 years later, she got married in 1947 to Carl Friedan. When she had her first child, she was given 2 years of maternity leave from her job at the Trade Union Service, an editing company. Then, 3.5 years later, when she was pregnant again, she was fired because she was going to take another 2 years off. Betty Friedan wrote about what it was like to be a housewife and how women could do more than be mothers. In total, Friedan had 3 books published. The books were titled The Feminine Mystique, The Second Stage, and The Fountain of Age. These books empowered women to stand up for their rights by striking, like they did on August 26, 1970, on New York City's Fifth Avenue. They were marching because it was the 50th anniversary of the 19th Amendment. Also, Betty Friedan wanted to signify the effort for women.
On behalf of the unprecedented coalition of women that today has called this strike to confront the unfinished business of our equality, women young and old, women black and white, women students, women grandmothers who fought for the original right to vote, women Republicans, Democrats, Socialists, young radical women, establishment women, rich women who know that all women are poor, housewives, professional women, women who are famous, but no woman makes it alone, and that's all women are equal and free.
Friedan got the idea to write The Feminine Mystique at her 15-year college reunion, when she surveyed her former classmates about whether or not they were happy as housewives. Most of them were not, so in the following years, she wrote about her findings. The Feminine Mystique was very revolutionary. The first printing of it sold 1.4 million copies. Betty Friedan showed that not all women were happy as housewives, including herself. In the book, she explained, each suburban wife struggles with it alone, as she made the beds, shopped for groceries, matched slipcover material, ate peanut butter sandwiches with her children, chauffeured Cub Scouts and brownies, lay beside her husband at night. She was afraid to ask, even of herself, the silent question, "Is this all?" By this she means that women did the same things every day, but weren't satisfied. For women living back then, life was often boring because they did the same things every day. She also wrote, in almost every professional field, in business and in the arts and sciences, women are still treated as second-class citizens. It would be a great service to tell girls who plan to work in society to expect this subtle, uncomfortable discrimination. Tell them not to be quiet and hope it will go away, but fight it. A girl should not expect special privileges because of her sex, but neither should she adjust to prejudice and discrimination. Perhaps when she wrote this, she was thinking about how she was fired from her job because she was going to take a maternity leave. Also, in the 1960s, when the Feminine Mystique was published, women could have jobs, but men dominated the workforce, and most especially in management. The Second Stage was published in 1982, almost 20 years after the Feminine Mystique. It focused on how fathers and mothers now shared household responsibilities, such as raising the children. At that time, women needed to work, not only for personal fulfillment, but they needed money for their family. At the time of the Second Stage's publishing, 45% of mothers with children less than 6 years old were working because of economic troubles. That was a big change from 1960, when only 10% of mothers with children under 6 were working. Yet, those women were still struggling to form an identity with all the conflicts and demands of working and raising children. She also wrote in the Second Stage, "This uneasy sense of battles won only to be fought over again, of battles that should have been won, according to all the rules, and yet are not, of battles that suddenly one does not really want to win, and the weariness of battle altogether." How many women feel it? This discusses how a woman is always fighting for her rights. Also, it says how women sometimes have to break the rules so they have equality to men. The Fountain of Age was published in 1993. It focused on growing older and how a woman's life changes with age. This was less of a protest of women's rights than her previous books, but was still very important because she wrote about things that women didn't dare write about before, like retirement issues such as when to retire and what to do after retirement. Betty Friedan was not only an author, but an activist for women's rights. She started 3 major organizations that still continue today. In the years following the Feminine Mystique's publishing, Friedan, with other activists, started the National Organization for Women, the National Women's Political Caucus, and the National Association for the Repeal of Abortion Laws. Betty Friedan was the first president of the National Organization for Women. She worked with other feminists like Gloria Steinem and Bella Abzug to create the National Women's Political Caucus in 1971. All of these organizations still continue to help women today. Betty Friedan helped make a lot of changes in our country for women. Her work was truly a turning point in our history. However, the struggle goes on. Right now, there are 20 female senators in the United States, which is a record high for our country. However, there have been 44 male presidents, but no female presidents, yet. Women are still in the shadows of our federal government. There were only 18 female CEOs of the Fortune 500 companies in 2012. Those women have defied many odds to get to their high-ranking positions. Still, that is a very low number. 96.4% of the Fortune 500 company CEOs are male. That needs to change in order for full equality. Betty Friedan's work was a turning point that permanently changed history. Because of the Feminine Mystique, the Second Stage, and the Fountain of Age, women stood up for their rights. Also, because of the National Organization for Women, the National Women's Political Caucus, and the National Association for the Repeal of Abortion Laws, women's rights are constantly being improved. On February 4th, 2006, Betty Friedan passed away, but her legend lives on. Betty Friedan brought forth to our country a new idea of what women could accomplish in society. Her role in the second feminist movement was hugely important.